Hey everybody, good Monday. It's Wednesday. It is not Monday at all. Hey everybody, good. This is like now I'm. See now it's open. Now I'm yeah. Hey everybody, good Wednesday morning. All right, I'm gonna start this out properly. As always, got the cup of coffee. Happy Wednesday. So today we're gonna be talking about a really interesting topic, which is building fluency, which is a big word, the F word. So I say let's just jump straight into the video. Right before we start, of course, I wanted to just say a really huge thank you to my new Patreon supporters. We've had 2 new people this week. And also, of course, if you like this content, please do consider subscribing. Okay, so the topic of this video came from a walk I had yesterday evening, and I was listening to an episode of the You Can Learn Chinese podcast with John Pasden and Jared Turner, 2 wonderful blokes, and they were talking about a research paper from Paul Nation. So those of you who don't know, Paul Nation is widely regarded as one of the leading researchers and experts in vocabulary acquisition, and he has this concept of the 4 strands of language learning or language education. And so the particular paper they were discussing is about how to build a balanced language learning program. So we're talking about educational programs now. And so in that paper, Paul Nation makes the argument that not only are these 4 separate strands, and they're not necessarily sequential, they're not necessarily things that you do 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order, but he also believes that a balanced language program should do them equally. And so we have comprehensible, meaningful input, we have sort of form-based language instruction, and then we have meaningful output, and then finally we have building fluency. And so we can talk more about the other strands and about that actual paper in the future if you would like. I did try to read the paper, but I had trouble getting access to it, so I had to sort of rely on the podcast and a few different blog articles. However, the thing that really struck me as I was listening to it was that Paul Nation specifically calls out the fact that building fluency means working with what you have. And it excludes, ideally, working with lots of new language. And I thought this is really interesting because many of you will know that I often say if your goal is to start speaking a language, then it's better to be able to say a lot of things with a little bit of language rather than know tons and tons of language and not really be able to say anything at all, because that can happen and it often does happen. And so the underlying principle there is that you're gonna at some point have to practice saying a lot of things and building fluency with whatever language you happen to have. And at the end of the day, for most people, I think the end goal is fluency. Now, in my case, I also pull listening into that. I like the idea of being able to listen fluently, or being able to read fluently, or write fluently. So for me, fluency doesn't necessarily just mean speaking. So I think that whether your goal is more about reading books and reading novels and diving into literature, or maybe you're a lover of cinema and you want to dive into that, or whatever it might be, I think most of us want to strive for some level of fluency. And so the question I have for you then, as a listener, is how much time have you or do you spend just simply building fluency with the language that you have for the most part? Because what I think is that very often we get stuck on this treadmill, right? It's like a treadmill of just learning new vocabulary, learning new things. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because we see fluency as this thing we have to build up to. And so we think that the key is just learning lots and lots of new things. But it's a very, very interesting problem that if you just spend all of your time just constantly trying to pour in new words, pour in new patterns, new idioms, new phrases, etc., well, you're not actually able to really focus on building fluency. I remember back when I was 16, 17, learning my first foreign language, which was Spanish, and I was able to actually speak pretty fluently, but with a very small amount of language. Now, this had downsides, right? I struggled a lot with listening, and it was difficult to really engage in complex conversations. But the point here is that for whatever reason, I built up quite a lot of fluency in speaking with the words that I had, with the language that I had. And so I think even for myself, I often get on the treadmill and I'm just going and I'm going and I'm going and I'm just learning more words, more phrases, more. And I think that if you've ever had that feeling where you feel like you know a lot of words, you know a lot of all these things, but somehow when you try to speak, it's like they're all just swimming around up there and it like nothing's quite accessible. It's like you need loading time to access each piece of information. Well, I think this is the cause of that. It's that you need to spend time actually mobilizing all that language that you have, activating it and building fluency. So I just thought that was a really interesting topic. I love just occasionally asking questions to the audience. Again, do you do this? Do you spend time building fluency? Have you had that feeling where you're like, oh, I know that I have the words. I know that it's up here, but when I try to speak, there's so many choices and I can't remember which one is which. I think we've all had that feeling if you've gotten sort of to an intermediate stage of learning a language. And so, yeah, I mean, even for myself, like I said, this is a good reminder that I need to, do this more. By the way, that's one of the reasons why I'm using these graded readers. It's partly so that I have that very passive phase in the beginning of reading through a chapter and ideally being able to read at my level, right? Being able to read something where hopefully I know most of the words. And so what I'm really doing is training my reading fluency, training my sort of processing power of taking in language and being able to parse it into meaning and enjoy and understand that. And I think that does carry over to speaking and listening and writing as well. But then with graded readers, I do also combine that with the active phase of learning that we talked about in several videos last week. And that's pretty much it. I really like these little just interesting tidbits and just things to make you think. So let me know what you think of this topic and my thoughts on it. I would love to hear your thoughts, your experiences. And in particular, I really am curious to know for the audience, how much time do you actually spend building fluency? And do you feel like after listening to this video, are you doing it enough? Or maybe could you be doing it more? Let me know. One last big thank you to my Patreon supporters. And if you want to join those lovely people, it's patreon.com/Robin MacPherson. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful Wednesday and I'll see you back here on Friday. Cheers.